Close your eyes and imagine falling. Not the kind of falling that startles you awake. Not the kind that makes your stomach lurch. This is slower than that. Gentler than that. Imagine falling the way a leaf falls from a very tall tree. Unhurried, weightless, trusting the air to hold you exactly as long as it needs to. Except tonight, it isn't air that holds you. It's water. You are beginning a journey that very few living things ever make. A journey straight down, through the deepest part of every ocean on Earth, into a place so far below the surface that sunlight forgets it exists. This descent will take you nearly 7 miles. If you could fall in a straight line from the peak of the tallest mountain on the planet, and keep falling past its base, past sea level, and down through the dark for miles more, you still wouldn't reach the bottom of where you're headed tonight. But there's no need to rush. You have hours ahead of you. Let your body settle into the mattress beneath you the way a diver settles into their harness, trusting it completely, letting it carry all your weight, so that every other part of you is free to simply drift. Right now, above you, the world still looks like the ocean you know. Sunlight scatters across the surface in gold and blue. Waves catch the light and toss it back into the sky. This is the part of the sea most people picture when they close their eyes and think of the ocean, bright, familiar, alive with color. Fish dart between beams of light. The water here is warm enough to swim in, but you're not staying here. Slowly, so slowly you barely notice it happening, you begin to sink. Down past the frame of a boat you might have imagined at the start. Down past the last few feet, where light behaves the way it does at the surface, clean and white and warm. And somewhere in this first stretch of your descent, something begins to change. The blue around you deepens. At first it's barely perceptible. The kind of change you'd only notice if you were paying very close attention, which you don't need to do right now. Just notice, gently, that the water is growing a shade darker. The gold in the light is the first color to disappear. Then the red. Then, slowly, the orange and the yellow follow it into memory, until all that's left is a deep, endless blue, the color of a summer sky just after the sun has gone down, but just before the first star appears. This is called the twilight zone. Not because anything strange or unsettling waits for you here, but because this is where day quietly becomes night, even though it's the middle of the afternoon somewhere far above you. You could hover here for a while if you wanted. Some creatures do, drifting in this blue half-light their entire lives, never needing anything brighter, never missing what they've never known. But you keep sinking. Softly. Steadily. The way sleep itself arrives, if you let it, not with a single moment where waking ends and dreaming begins, but as a slow dissolving of one state into another. So slow that by the time you notice you've crossed over, you're already there. The blue deepens into something closer to black. And then, quietly, the light disappears altogether. This is the part of the ocean where sunlight simply cannot follow you. No matter how bright the day was when you started, no matter how clear the water above. Down here, in the vast, dark middle of the sea, night is permanent. It has been night here since long before you were born, and it will still be night here long after. The dark isn't empty, though. It isn't frightening. Think of it instead as the deepest, most complete kind of quiet you've ever felt. The hush of a snowfall at midnight, the stillness of a house when everyone you love is finally, safely asleep. You keep falling. The water grows colder now, and the pressure around you begins to build. Not painfully, not sharply, but steadily, like the weight of a heavy blanket settling more firmly across your shoulders the further you sink. Every few hundred feet, the ocean presses a little more firmly against you, the way the day's tiredness presses more firmly against your eyelids the later it gets. You don't fight it. You let it hold you. Hours pass this way. There's no rush at the bottom of the ocean, and there's no rush here in your bed either. Somewhere far above, on the sunlit surface, 5 hours might have gone by since you began this fall. An entire afternoon and evening folded into your slow, steady drift downward. Down here, time moves differently. It stretches. It softens. It stops mattering in the way it does up there, with its clocks and its schedules and its small, insistent urgencies. There is only the dark and the cold and the gentle, endless feeling of sinking. Somewhere below you, still miles away, still hours into your future, lies the deepest place on this entire planet. A place carved into the ocean floor like a scar, plunging down further than anywhere else the sea has ever gone. A trench so deep that if you dropped Mount Everest into it, its peak would still sit more than a mile beneath the surface of the water above. You don't need to picture it yet. Not fully. For now, just know that it's there, waiting quietly in the dark the way it always has, patient, ancient, and completely still. It has been down there since long before there were people to wonder about it. It will still be there long after tonight is over. For now, all you need to do is keep sinking. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders soften into whatever is holding you. Feel the last bit of warmth and light fade gently behind you, the way the surface of the ocean has already faded behind you. Not gone, just very, very far away now, and none of your concern. The silence around you is complete. You are following, in your own quiet way tonight, the same path that rope once took. Down through the twilight, down through the darkness, down toward a place that took an entire ship's crew hours of patient waiting just to measure. Let that patience settle into you now. There's no need to rush the rest of the way. The trench has waited millions of years to be found. It can wait a little longer for you to arrive. Feel your breathing slow further. Feel the last bit of tension leave your hands, your jaw, the space between your eyebrows. Somewhere far below, in basins carved by the impossibly slow collision of 2 continents' worth of ancient rock, the deepest place on Earth is still waiting. You still have a long way to fall. And there is no better way to spend the time than exactly like this, sinking, softening, drifting toward the dark. There's a particular kind of wonder that only comes from trying to picture something almost too large for the mind to hold. You've likely felt it before, looking up at a night sky full of stars, or standing at the edge of a canyon, so wide the far side blurs into haze. Let yourself feel that same wonder now, gently, as you continue sinking toward the bottom of Challenger Deep. Because the number waiting for you at the end of this fall is almost difficult to believe. Nearly 7 miles. Almost 11 kilometers straight down, from the sunlit surface far above you to the silent floor still waiting somewhere beneath. Let that distance sit with you for a moment, without trying to fully grasp it. Some numbers aren't meant to be understood all at once, only felt slowly, the way you're feeling this one now, 1 mile of dark water at a time. Here is one way to hold it. Picture the tallest mountain on Earth, Mount Everest, its peak so high that climbers need bottled oxygen just to breathe there, its summit brushing the very edge of where planes fly. Now imagine lifting that entire mountain, base and all, out of the ground in Nepal, carrying it across the world, and lowering it gently into the trench beneath you. It would disappear. Not just its base, not just its lower slopes, all of it. The entire mountain, from its foundations to its icy summit, would vanish beneath the surface of the water above you, and there would still be more than a mile of ocean left above where its peak used to be. The highest point on land, swallowed whole, with room to spare. You are falling toward a place deeper than the tallest mountain on Earth is tall. Let yourself sit inside that thought the way you might sit inside a very deep, very warm bath. Not rushing to climb back out, just letting it surround you completely. Everest took millions of years to rise as high as it did, pushed slowly upward by the same restless plates that elsewhere carved this trench downward. 2 extremes, built by the same patient forces, at opposite ends of what our planet is capable of. This is one of the most dramatic landscapes anywhere on Earth, and yet almost no one will ever see it. Not because it's hidden exactly, but because it is so remote, so deep, so surrounded by crushing pressure and absolute darkness, that reaching it has always been one of the greatest challenges we've ever set ourselves. Think for a moment about how many people have stood on top of Mount Everest. Thousands by now. Guided expeditions climb it most years. It has become, in some strange way, almost familiar, a destination, difficult but achievable, marked by well-worn routes and established camps. Now think about how many people have ever reached the bottom of Challenger Deep, the place you are falling toward right now. Fewer than have walked on the surface of the moon. Let that settle over you. More human beings have left the Earth entirely, traveled through the vacuum of space, and set foot on another world, than have ever traveled the 7 miles straight down to the bottom of our own ocean. The moon, in some ways, has been easier for us to reach than the deepest place on our own planet. It isn't hard to understand why, once you consider what waits down here. At the depths you are approaching, the water above you would press down with a weight of over 1,000 atmospheres, the equivalent of the weight of 50 jumbo jets, all pressing down on a single point. Any vessel built to carry someone here has to be engineered to withstand forces that would crush an ordinary submarine as easily as a hand crushes an empty can. The temperature hovers just above freezing. The light hasn't reached here in millions of years, and it never will. And yet, despite all of that, despite the pressure, the cold, the crushing dark, this place is not empty. This place is not lifeless. Even here, in conditions that seem designed to prevent anything from surviving at all, life has found a way to exist. You'll meet some of it soon, drifting through the dark alongside you, quietly going about lives shaped entirely by depths like this. But for now, let yourself simply feel the scale of where you are. You are sinking toward one of the most extreme places our planet has to offer. More remote than the peak of the tallest mountain, harder to reach than the surface of the moon, deeper than almost anything the human mind is built to easily imagine. And yet here you are, drifting toward it slowly, safely, without any need to rush or strain or hold your breath. There is something quietly reassuring in that. The trench doesn't ask anything difficult of you tonight. It doesn't require oxygen tanks or reinforced steel or years of training. All it asks is that you keep sinking, keep softening, keep letting go of the tension in your shoulders and the thoughts still lingering from your day. The scale of this place is vast. Your task within it is small and simple and gentle. Just keep falling. Feel the cool weight of the water around you, patient and constant. Feel your breathing settle into a slow, steady rhythm, matching the unhurried pace of your descent. Somewhere far below, the ocean floor is still deepening, basin by basin, toward that lowest point named after a ship from a century and a half ago. You don't need to reach it quickly. You don't need to reach it at all, really, in the sense of arriving somewhere and being finished. Tonight isn't about arriving. It's about the long, slow act of sinking itself, mile after quiet mile, deeper into the dark, deeper into stillness, deeper into sleep. Let the scale of this place hold you rather than overwhelm you. Vast, ancient, and entirely indifferent to time. The perfect place to let your own sense of time dissolve completely. Keep sinking. There's no rush at all. Somewhere in this long, slow fall, without any single moment marking the change, you cross a kind of threshold. The ocean around you stops feeling like an extension of the world above and starts becoming something else entirely. A world with its own rules, its own weather, its own quiet laws that have nothing to do with the one you left behind hours ago. Let yourself notice this shift softly, the way you might notice the temperature change when you walk from a sunlit room into a cool hallway. You already know that the water has grown colder as you've descended, and that the light disappeared long ago. But there's another change happening now, one you can't see but might almost imagine you can feel. A change in the water itself, pressing more and more firmly against you with every passing minute. Here is a gentle way to picture it. For roughly every 30 feet you sink, the weight of the water above you grows by another full measure of pressure, another entire atmosphere, stacked invisibly on top of all the others that came before it. At the surface, you carry the weight of the sky itself, though you never feel it, because you've spent your whole life adapted to exactly that amount. But down here, mile after mile below the surface, atmosphere stacks on atmosphere, pressure layering on pressure, until by the time you reach the bottom of this trench, you'll be resting beneath 1,000 times the pressure of the world you started in. 1,000 times. You don't need to do anything with that number except let it wash over you, the way the pressure itself is washing gently against you right now. Not painfully, not violently, just present, just real, just part of what makes this place so entirely different from anywhere else. This is pressure enough to crush an ordinary submarine as easily as a footstep crushes a paper cup. Pressure enough that any vessel brought down here has to be built from materials designed for exactly this: thick, rounded, reinforced, engineered by people who understood that this depth forgives no mistakes. But you don't need to worry about any of that tonight. You're not inside a vessel straining against the dark. You're simply drifting, weightless and unhurried, through a world that has always existed like this, long before anyone tried to reach it, and will go on existing like this long after. Notice, too, how completely dark it has become around you. Not the kind of dark you find in a bedroom at night, where your eyes slowly adjust and shapes begin to emerge from the shadows. This is a deeper dark than that, a true absence of light, unbroken by moon or stars or any hint of what waits beyond it. Sunlight reached its limit miles above you, and it has never come this deep, not once, not in all the millions of years this trench has existed. If you kept your eyes open forever in a place like this, they would never adjust, because there is nothing here for them to adjust to. And yet, the dark doesn't need to feel frightening. Let it feel instead like the deepest, most complete kind of rest, a darkness so total that it asks nothing of you. No need to watch for anything. No need to stay alert. Nothing to see, and so nothing to worry over. Just you, and the water, and the endless quiet dark, folding gently around you like the heaviest, safest blanket you've ever pulled over your shoulders. If anyone were to explore this world directly, and a few remarkable people have, they would need to bring their own light with them. Powerful beams, mounted to the outside of reinforced vessels, cutting narrow columns of white through water that has never known illumination. Wherever those lights point, the ocean suddenly exists in vivid detail, pale, drifting particles suspended in the water, the ghostly outline of the seafloor rising up to meet them. But wherever the lights don't point, the darkness remains exactly as complete as it has always been, patient and unbothered, waiting for the light to move on so it can settle back into place. Those same explorers rely on more than just their lights to find their way. Down here, in a world without landmarks, without sunlight, without anything resembling the horizon you're used to, sensors and instruments become a kind of second sight, quietly measuring depth, distance, the shape of the seafloor rising up ahead, translating this dark and silent world into numbers and shapes a person can understand. It's a little like how, right now, in the dark of your own room, you don't need your eyes to know where the blanket is or how far your hand is from the edge of the bed. Your body has its own quiet instruments too, senses that work perfectly well without any light at all. There's one more thing worth knowing about this deep, dark world, and it's this: the seafloor here isn't hard and solid the way a rocky mountainside might be. Much of it is soft, fine sediment, settled slowly over millions of years, layer upon layer, undisturbed by any current strong enough to stir it. It's a little like a floor covered in the softest, deepest dust imaginable, resting in perfect stillness because nothing has ever come along to disturb it. But if something does disturb it, the settling weight of a vessel, the brush of a mechanical arm, even the gentle push of water displaced by something passing through, that sediment doesn't resist. It lifts. It billows upward in slow, silent clouds, exactly the way flour might rise into the air if you tapped the bottom of the bag. And once it lifts, visibility here, which was already limited to the narrow reach of artificial light, can disappear almost entirely. The cloud hangs suspended, unhurried, in water so still and so undisturbed that it might take a very long time to finally settle again. You don't need to worry about disturbing anything tonight. You're not landing. You're not stirring the seafloor or clouding the water or leaving any mark at all on this ancient, undisturbed world. You're simply passing through it, weightless and welcome, the way a thought passes gently through a quiet mind without disturbing its stillness. Let yourself feel how completely different this world is from the one you woke up in this morning. No sunlight, no warmth, no wind, no birdsong, no distant hum of traffic or voices. Just pressure, patient and constant. Just darkness, complete and undisturbed. Just cold, quiet water, holding you exactly the way it has held this trench for millions of years. This is not a hostile place. It only feels that way if you imagine trying to fight it, trying to resist its pressure or outlast its cold. But you're not fighting anything tonight. You're simply allowing yourself to belong here, for now, exactly as you are, soft, unhurried, and completely at ease inside a world that asks nothing of you except that you keep sinking. So keep sinking. Feel the pressure settle around you like the weight of a hand resting gently on your shoulder. Feel the cold soften into something almost peaceful, like the cool side of the pillow late at night. Feel the darkness hold you the way it has always held this place. Not empty, not frightening, just deep and quiet and entirely wonderfully still. You are entering another world, and it is exactly where you're meant to be right now. As you continue to drift downward through this dark, pressurized world, let me tell you a story, one that unfolded in this very trench a long time ago, when the place you're falling through now was still almost entirely a mystery to everyone alive. It was the 23rd of January, in the year 1960. Picture it, if you like, the way you might picture an old photograph, slightly grainy, softened by time, full of a kind of quiet courage that belonged to an earlier age of exploration. On that day, two men climbed into a small steel capsule, sealed themselves inside, and began a journey that no human being had ever completed before. Their names were Jacques Piccard and Walsh, and their vessel was called the Trieste. Try to picture it alongside you now, somewhere in the dark water around you, the way you might picture an old friend walking beside you on a familiar path. The Trieste wasn't sleek, or fast, or built for comfort. It looked almost like two separate parts fused together, a large upper float, filled with gasoline because gasoline is lighter than water and doesn't compress under pressure the way air does, and beneath it, a small, thick-walled steel sphere, barely large enough for two men to sit inside. That little sphere was the only part of the vessel built to withstand the crushing pressure of the depths. Everything else existed simply to get it there and bring it back. Jacques Piccard came from a family that seemed almost destined for this kind of journey. His father had spent years designing balloons that carried people higher into the sky than anyone had gone before, and Jacques had turned that same restless curiosity toward the opposite direction entirely. Not up, toward the edge of space, but down, toward the edge of what the ocean could survive. Walsh was a young naval officer, calm and steady, the kind of person you'd want beside you if you were about to do something no one had ever done before. Together, on that January morning, they began to sink. You already understand, better than most people ever will, exactly what that descent must have felt like. The same fading light you drifted through hours ago. The same deepening blue, the same eventual darkness, complete and total. The same growing pressure, mile after mile, pressing more firmly against the walls of their small steel sphere with every passing minute. But their journey was not exactly like yours, where you have the luxury of drifting freely, unhurried, needing nothing and risking nothing. Piccard and Walsh sat inside a vessel that groaned around them as the pressure increased. Sudden, sharp cracks of noise as the steel adjusted to forces greater than almost anything ever built by human hands had been asked to withstand. Imagine sitting inside that small sphere, feeling each of those sounds pass through the metal and into your own chest, and choosing, each time, to trust the calculations of the engineers who built it rather than the instinctive fear rising in your own body. That takes a particular kind of courage, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, patient kind. The kind that simply keeps breathing steadily, checking instruments, trusting the plan, while the ocean presses harder and harder against the only thing separating you from it. Their descent took nearly 5 hours. 5 hours of sinking through darkness, much like your own tonight, though theirs came with the added weight of knowing that no one before them had ever traveled this far down and returned safely to describe it. Every mile they sank was a mile into the genuinely unknown. No photographs to compare against, no previous explorers' notes to reassure them, nothing but the numbers on their instruments and the quiet trust they placed in their vessel and in each other. And then, after 5 long hours of descent, the Trieste finally reached the bottom. Try to imagine that moment alongside them. The gentle settling of the vessel onto the seafloor, the soft cloud of ancient sediment rising up around the sphere's small windows, just as we spoke of earlier. Sediment undisturbed for millions of years, suddenly stirred by the first human visitors this place had ever known. Piccard and Walsh had done something no one in the history of our species had ever done. They had reached the deepest point on the entire surface of the Earth. For a moment, let that sit with you. Two men, inside a small steel sphere, resting on the floor of Challenger Deep. Nearly 7 miles beneath the waves, further down than anyone had ever traveled, in a place so remote and so hostile that even now, more than 60 years later, only a small handful of people have ever followed them there. They didn't stay very long. After such an extraordinary journey down, they remained at the bottom for only about 20 minutes. Just enough time to look out through the small window of their sphere, to confirm what they had found, to take in the quiet, alien stillness of the world they had traveled so far and so carefully to reach. 20 minutes after 5 hours of descent. It's worth sitting with that imbalance for a moment. How much of an achievement like this is spent simply getting there and back safely, and how brief and precious the actual arrival can be. In those 20 minutes, in the beam of their vessel's lights, Piccard later described seeing something moving along the seafloor beneath them. A small, flat fish, drifting calmly across the sediment, as though the deepest, most hostile place on Earth were simply an ordinary home to be going about an ordinary day in. Whether that sighting was exactly what it seemed has been debated by scientists ever since, but the deeper truth of it has never been in doubt. Life exists here, in the crushing dark, in a place many people once assumed could support nothing at all. Then, after their brief time at the bottom, Piccard and Walsh began the long journey back up, reversing the 5-hour descent, rising slowly back through the darkness, back through the cold, back through the deepening and then lightening blue, until finally, after a full day's journey down and back, they broke the surface once more into sunlight and open air. They had done something that no one before them had ever managed. They had touched the deepest point on our planet and returned to tell the story. It would be more than 50 years before anyone attempted that same journey alone. As you continue drifting downward tonight, following in some small way the same path those two men once traveled, let yourself feel a quiet kinship with them. Not their tension, not their courage under pressure, but simply the shared experience of sinking through this same dark water, toward this same distant floor. They did it in a cramped steel sphere, straining against forces most vessels could never survive. You're doing it now in the safest way imaginable, wrapped in blankets, weightless with rest, needing nothing from this journey except the slow, steady drift toward sleep. Feel that difference settle over you like something reassuring. Their journey required immense bravery. Yours requires only softness, only surrender, only the willingness to keep letting go, breath by breath, until you're resting as peacefully as the seafloor they once disturbed for just 20 quiet minutes, 60 years ago, at the bottom of the world. Keep sinking now. There's a very long way still to go, and no reason at all to hurry. Time moves differently down here, as you've likely noticed by now. Whole decades can pass in the space of a single patient sentence, the same way whole hours have already drifted by in your own descent tonight, barely felt, barely counted, simply absorbed into the long, slow rhythm of sinking. So let's let more than 50 years pass now, quietly, the way they passed in this trench itself. After Piccard and Walsh rose back up into the sunlight in 1960, the bottom of Challenger Deep settled back into its ancient stillness. No human eyes returned to see it, not for a very long time. The trench simply waited, patient as it has always been, undisturbed by anyone at all, while up above, the rest of the world moved through more than 5 decades of change. And then, on March 26th, in the year 2012, someone came back. You might recognize his name, even out here in the dark, drifting so far from the world of films and screens and familiar faces. James Cameron, a filmmaker, known for creating vast underwater worlds inside a studio, for imagining the depths of the ocean vividly enough to fill entire cinemas with wonder. But long before any of that, and increasingly as the years went on, Cameron carried a different kind of fascination. Not with imagining the deep ocean, but with actually reaching it. Picture him now, in his own vessel, beginning his descent into this same trench you've been falling through all this time. Where Piccard and Walsh had once traveled together, side by side inside their small steel sphere, Cameron made this journey entirely alone. Just one person, sealed inside a narrow vertical capsule called the Deep-Sea Challenger. Sinking through the same fading light, the same deepening cold, the same complete and total darkness you've been drifting through tonight. Imagine what that solitude must have felt like. No one beside him to share the tension of each creak and groan of the vessel's hull. No one to look toward for reassurance as the pressure built, mile after mile, toward that same crushing weight you learned about earlier. 1,000 times the pressure of the surface world. Just Cameron, alone with his instruments, alone with the dark, alone with the quiet hum of his own thoughts as he sank steadily downward. His vessel was different from the Trieste in almost every way. Rather than the two-part design of float and sphere, the Deep-Sea Challenger was built as a single narrow vertical tube. Engineered specifically so that Cameron could descend feet first, folded into a small pilot's chamber no larger than the front seat of a car. It was designed for speed, too. Where Piccard and Walsh's descent had taken nearly 5 hours, Cameron's vessel was built to sink faster, more efficiently, cutting that long fall down to just over 2. Let yourself imagine that faster descent alongside your own slow one tonight. Not to rush your own pace, but simply to notice the contrast. You have all the time in the world to drift down toward this same seafloor. Cameron's journey, remarkable as it was, still had to fit within the practical limits of battery power, life support, and the narrow window of a single day's mission. When he finally reached the bottom, more than 50 years after Piccard and Walsh's brief 20 minutes there, Cameron did something they hadn't been able to do. He stayed. For nearly 3 hours, alone at the deepest point on Earth, Cameron explored the seafloor of Challenger deep in a way no one ever had before. Where the two men in 1960 had only their eyes and a small window, Cameron carried with him a small fleet of cameras, specially built to withstand the crushing pressure around him, capturing the ghostly, pale seafloor in a level of detail no one had ever seen. He recorded video, hour after hour, of a world that had never once been filmed. He photographed strange, delicate creatures drifting through his lights, translucent, alien-looking animals shaped by millions of years of life in complete darkness. He carefully collected samples of the ancient sediment beneath him, sediment that had settled undisturbed for longer than human history has existed, carrying it back up to the surface so that scientists could study, for the first time, exactly what this deepest of all places was made of. Picture him there for a moment, alone in his small capsule, lights cutting narrow beams through water that had waited 50 years for company. There's something quietly moving about that image. One person, entirely alone, further from any other human being than almost anyone in history has ever been, and yet completely absorbed, completely present, gathering quiet observations about a world most of us will never see even once. When Cameron's 3 hours at the bottom finally came to an end, a small mechanical arm on his vessel malfunctioned, and rather than risk a longer delay in a place that forgives no mistakes, he made the decision to begin his ascent earlier than planned. Slowly, steadily, he rose back up through the same darkness, the same cold, the same deepening and then lightning blue you've been sinking through all evening, until finally he broke the surface again alone, having set a new record for the deepest solo dive any human being has ever made. There's a particular kind of stillness in stories like this one. A person choosing, entirely of their own will, to travel further into solitude and darkness than almost anyone in history, not because they had to, but because some quiet curiosity pulled them there. You might feel a small echo of that same pull yourself right now, drifting alone through this dark water, no one beside you, nothing asked of you except your own quiet presence in this vast, still place. Let that feeling settle over you gently. You're not truly alone, of course. You're held, right now, by everything soft and warm around you, drifting safely toward sleep rather than toward any real depth. But there's something worth carrying from Cameron's journey, all the same. The idea that solitude, in the right circumstances, isn't something to fear. That some of the most meaningful places we ever visit, in the ocean or in our own minds late at night, are ones we have to travel to quietly and alone and patiently without anyone else beside us to hurry the pace. Feel your own breathing slow further now. Feel the last remaining tension easing out of your body, the way Cameron's small vessel eventually eased itself back toward the surface, mission complete, curiosity satisfied, ready finally to rest. You are still sinking, still falling gently through this ancient, patient dark. Somewhere below you, the seafloor that Cameron once photographed and sampled is still waiting, just as quiet and undisturbed as it has always been. Let yourself keep drifting toward it. There is no need to hurry. There never has been. Not every journey to the bottom of this trench has carried a human being along with it. Some of the most patient explorers to ever reach this place were never alive at all, small, careful machines, built and lowered by people who remained safely on the surface, hundreds of miles above the darkness you're still sinking through. Let yourself imagine one of these machines now, drifting somewhere nearby in the dark water, moving with the slow, deliberate patience of something that has no need to breathe, no fear to manage, no heartbeat to steady as the pressure builds around it. Between the two great human journeys you've just learned about, Piccard and Walsh in 1960 and Cameron more than 50 years later, a different kind of explorer made its own quiet trip to the bottom of Challenger Deep. In 1995, a small unmanned vehicle called Kaiko, built by researchers in Japan, was lowered down through this same water, connected the entire way to a ship on the surface by a long, thin cable, a lifeline stretching nearly 7 miles down into the dark. Picture that cable for a moment, thin and impossibly long, unspooling slowly from a ship far above, sinking down through the same fading light, the same deepening cold you drifted through hours ago. At the end of it, Kaiko carried cameras and sampling equipment, patiently gathering images and specimens from a seafloor that very few instruments had ever touched. It had no pilot inside it, no person holding their breath as the pressure climbed. It simply followed its careful instructions, mile after mile, doing quietly and methodically what it had been built to do. There's something peaceful in imagining a machine like this, moving through such extreme darkness without any of the fear a person might carry into the same place. No racing heartbeat, no quiet worry pressing at the edges of its thoughts. Just steady, patient work, exactly the way your own body is working right now, quietly and automatically, breath after breath, without needing you to manage or worry about a single part of it. Years later, in 2009, another such vehicle followed the same path down. This one was called Nereus, and it carried something new with it, the ability to work two different ways. For part of its mission, it stayed connected to the surface by a cable, just as Kaiko once had. But Nereus could also disconnect from that cable entirely, and drift freely along the bottom of the trench, exploring on its own, gathering information, and returning later to find its way back to the surface without ever needing a constant thread connecting it to the world above. Imagine that freedom for a moment, a small machine, alone in the deepest place on Earth, untethered, trusting its own careful design to bring it home safely. The same quiet trust a diver places in their equipment, or the same trust you're placing right now in the softness beneath you, in the safety of the room around you, in the simple fact that you are held and warm and entirely safe as you drift. It might seem, from the surface, as though sending a machine down here should be simple compared to sending a person. No need to keep anyone alive. No need for oxygen or warmth, or a safe return for a living pilot. But the truth is that reaching the bottom of this trench remains extraordinarily difficult, no matter who or what is making the journey. The same pressure that presses against a human vessel presses just as firmly against any machine built to survive down here. 1,000 times the weight of the surface world, patient and unyielding, testing every seal, every joint, every carefully engineered surface for the smallest possible weakness. The same absolute darkness that swallows sunlight miles above the seafloor swallows it just as completely for a machine's cameras, meaning every image, every observation, depends entirely on the artificial lights it carries with it, exactly like the explorers who came before. And the cold here is patient too, indifferent to whether flesh or metal is what it presses against. Every wire, every battery, every delicate mechanism has to be built to function in near-freezing water, far from any warmth, far from any easy repair if something begins to fail. Perhaps hardest of all is the sheer distance of the return journey. Whether carried by a human pilot or guided by careful programming, everything that goes down into this trench has to come back up again, rising slowly back through miles of dark, cold water, back through the pressure easing gradually with every foot gained, back toward the light that waits, patiently, at the surface. That ascent takes hours every single time, with no shortcuts, no faster path, just the same slow, careful rise that mirrors the same slow, careful fall. In some ways, these machines remind us of something worth carrying with you tonight. They don't rush. They don't panic. They move through the most extreme, most hostile environment on the planet with a kind of patient, steady persistence, doing exactly what they were built to do, trusting their design, trusting the process, one careful movement at a time. You might notice a similar quality in your own body right now, if you pay gentle attention to it. Your breath doesn't rush, even here in the deepest, darkest part of your evening. Your heartbeat doesn't panic at the pressure of the day settling around you. Everything inside you simply continues, patiently, steadily, doing exactly what it has always known how to do, carrying you gently toward rest. Since Kaiko and Nereus made their own quiet journeys down here, a small handful of other vehicles have followed, each one adding a little more to what we understand about this remote and hostile place. Each mission remains difficult. Each one requires the same careful engineering, the same patient planning, the same acceptance that this trench, no matter how many times it's visited, will never become easy to reach. But that difficulty has never stopped us from returning. There's something worth admiring in that, the quiet, persistent curiosity that keeps pulling explorers, human and mechanical alike, back down into this dark water, again and again, simply to understand a little more about the deepest place on our own planet. You're continuing that same journey now, in your own quiet way. Not to observe, not to sample, not to photograph, just to drift unhurried, through the same patient dark that has welcomed every explorer who ever came this way before you. Let yourself keep sinking. The seafloor is still waiting, exactly where it has always been. There's no need to hurry toward it at all. For much of this journey, you've been sinking through a world defined mostly by absence. The absence of light, the absence of warmth, the absence of sound, of color, of almost everything your body has come to expect from the surface world you left behind hours ago. It would be easy to imagine, drifting through so much emptiness, that nothing could possibly survive down here at all. But you'd be wrong, and gently, wonderfully so. Because even here, in the coldest, darkest, most crushing place on the entire planet, life has found a way not just to survive, but to belong. At the end of it, Kaiko carried cameras and sampling equipment, patiently gathering images and specimens from a seafloor that very few instruments had ever touched. It had no pilot inside it, no person holding their breath as the pressure climbed. It simply followed its careful instructions, mile after mile, doing quietly and methodically what it had been built to do. There's something peaceful in imagining a machine like this, moving through such extreme darkness without any of the fear a person might carry into the same place. No racing heartbeat, no quiet worry pressing at the edges of its thoughts. Just steady, patient work, exactly the way your own body is working right now, quietly and automatically, breath after breath, without needing you to manage or worry about a single part of it. Years later, in 2009, another such vehicle followed the same path down. This one was called Nereus, and it carried something new with it, the ability to work two different ways. For part of its mission, it stayed connected to the surface by a cable, just as Kaiko once had. But Nereus could also disconnect from that cable entirely and drift freely along the bottom of the trench, exploring on its own, gathering information, and returning later to find its way back to the surface without ever needing a constant thread connecting it to the world above. Imagine that freedom for a moment, a small machine, alone in the deepest place on Earth, untethered, trusting its own careful design to bring it home safely. The same quiet trust a diver places in their equipment, or the same trust you're placing right now in the softness beneath you, in the safety of the room around you, in the simple fact that you are held and warm and entirely safe as you drift. It might seem, from the surface, as though sending a machine down here should be simple compared to sending a person. No need to keep anyone alive. No need for oxygen or warmth, or a safe return for a living pilot. But the truth is that reaching the bottom of this trench remains extraordinarily difficult, no matter who or what is making the journey. The same pressure that presses against a human vessel presses just as firmly against any machine built to survive down here. 1,000 times the weight of the surface world, patient and unyielding, testing every seal, every joint, every carefully engineered surface for the smallest possible weakness. The same absolute darkness that swallows sunlight miles above the seafloor swallows it just as completely for a machine's cameras, meaning every image, every observation, depends entirely on the artificial lights it carries with it, exactly like the explorers who came before. And the cold here is patient too, indifferent to whether flesh or metal is what it presses against. Every wire, every battery, every delicate mechanism has to be built to function in near-freezing water, far from any warmth, far from any easy repair if something begins to fail. Perhaps hardest of all is the sheer distance of the return journey. Whether carried by a human pilot or guided by careful programming, everything that goes down into this trench has to come back up again, rising slowly back through miles of dark, cold water, back through the pressure easing gradually with every foot gained, back toward the light that waits, patiently, at the surface. That ascent takes hours every single time, with no shortcuts, no faster path, just the same slow, careful rise that mirrors the same slow, careful fall. In some ways, these machines remind us of something worth carrying with you tonight. They don't rush. They don't panic. They move through the most extreme, most hostile environment on the planet with a kind of patient, steady persistence, doing exactly what they were built to do, trusting their design, trusting the process, one careful movement at a time. You might notice a similar quality in your own body right now, if you pay gentle attention to it. Your breath doesn't rush, even here in the deepest, darkest part of your evening. Your heartbeat doesn't panic at the pressure of the day settling around you. Everything inside you simply continues, patiently, steadily, doing exactly what it has always known how to do, carrying you gently toward rest. Since Kaiko and Nereus made their own quiet journeys down here, a small handful of other vehicles have followed, each one adding a little more to what we understand about this remote and hostile place. Each mission remains difficult. Each one requires the same careful engineering, the same patient planning, the same acceptance that this trench, no matter how many times it's visited, will never become easy to reach. But that difficulty has never stopped us from returning. There's something worth admiring in that, the quiet, persistent curiosity that keeps pulling explorers, human and mechanical alike, back down into this dark water, again and again, simply to understand a little more about the deepest place on our own planet. You're continuing that same journey now, in your own quiet way. Not to observe, not to sample, not to photograph, just to drift unhurried, through the same patient dark that has welcomed every explorer who ever came this way before you. Let yourself keep sinking. The seafloor is still waiting, exactly where it has always been. There's no need to hurry toward it at all. For much of this journey, you've been sinking through a world defined mostly by absence. The absence of light, the absence of warmth, the absence of sound, of color, of almost everything your body has come to expect from the surface world you left behind hours ago. It would be easy to imagine, drifting through so much emptiness, that nothing could possibly survive down here at all. But you'd be wrong, and gently, wonderfully so. Because even here, in the coldest, darkest, most crushing place on the entire planet, life has found a way not just to survive, but to belong. As you continue drifting through this ancient, undisturbed world, there's one more part of the story worth telling, a quieter, more sobering one, but still worth sitting with gently, the way you might sit with any small, honest truth before letting it pass. For all the millions of years this trench has existed, hidden away beneath 7 miles of dark water, far beyond the reach of almost anything from the surface world, you might expect it to remain completely untouched by human hands. Further from us than almost anywhere else on Earth. Harder to reach than the moon. Surely, you might think, a place this remote would be the one part of our planet still completely free of our presence. But the ocean doesn't work in separate, isolated pieces. It moves. It circulates. Currents that begin near sunlit coastlines eventually find their way outward and downward, carrying with them whatever the surface world has left behind. When explorers first began reaching the very bottom of Challenger Deep, they expected to find a place entirely free of anything human. Instead, resting quietly on that ancient seafloor, alongside the ghostly snailfish and patient amphipods you learned about earlier, they found small pieces of plastic. A shopping bag, drifting gently across sediment that had remained undisturbed for millions of years. Fragments of packaging, settled quietly into a place further from any human city than almost anywhere else on the planet. Let that sit with you for just a moment, softly, without needing to hold on to it too tightly. It's a strange and quiet kind of discovery. Proof that even the most remote, most hidden, most difficult-to-reach corner of our entire world has still, somehow, felt the presence of the world above it. There's no need to carry any heaviness from this thought as you continue your descent tonight. It isn't yours to fix, or worry over, or solve from here in the dark, drifting peacefully towards sleep. It's simply a quiet, honest thread in this deep, else place. A reminder that everything on this planet is more connected than it often seems, the surface and the depths, the sunlit world and the permanent dark, all part of the same slow, continuous whole. If anything, let it deepen your appreciation for this place, rather than your worry. This trench has endured. Despite the pressure, despite the cold, despite even this faint, unexpected trace of the world so far above it, life continues here exactly as it always has, patient, resilient, undisturbed in every way that matters most. The amphipods still scavenge quietly along the seafloor. The snailfish still drift, pale and calm, through crushing dark. The ancient sediment still rests, mostly undisturbed, holding its slow secrets exactly as it has for millions of years. Let your breathing stay slow and easy as you carry this thought gently past you, the way the deep currents carry everything eventually softly without struggle. You don't need to solve anything tonight. You only need to keep drifting, keep softening, keep letting the weight of the day settle further and further away from you, mile after quiet mile. The trench remains mostly, exactly as it has always been, vast, dark, and remarkably alive. And you are still sinking gently toward it, safe and warm, and entirely at ease. You've been sinking for a very long time now. Hours, if you were counting them, though by now you've likely lost track entirely. The way time always seems to soften and blur in the final stretch before sleep. Let that blurring continue. There's nothing left to track tonight, only this last, gentle stretch of falling, and a few final thoughts to carry with you as you go. Because it's worth asking quietly, in this unhurried moment, why any of this matters. Why so many people, across so many decades, have spent so much effort reaching a place this dark, this cold, this difficult, this far from anything resembling comfort or convenience. The answer is that this trench, more than almost anywhere else on Earth, works like a kind of natural laboratory. A place where the planet quietly reveals truths about itself that would be far harder to learn anywhere else. Think back, for a moment, to the two great plates you learned about earlier, meeting deep beneath the surface, one patiently sliding beneath the other, carving this entire trench into being over millions of patient years. Scientists studying this place have learned enormous amounts about how our planet's surface moves and shifts and slowly reshapes itself, simply by studying the quiet, ongoing collision happening here, mile after dark mile beneath your drifting body right now. Every tremor recorded near this trench, every subtle shift in the seafloor, adds another small piece to our understanding of the forces that shape mountains, trigger earthquakes, and slowly redraw the shape of every coastline on Earth. Then there's the life you learned about, too, the bacteria, the amphipods, the pale and patient snailfish, the quiet spoonworms resting in ancient sediment. Every one of these creatures represents a small, living lesson in resilience, in adaptation, in the sheer creative persistence of life, finding a way to exist somewhere that seems, by every reasonable measure, entirely impossible to survive. Scientists study these creatures not just out of curiosity, but because their adaptations, the way their bodies withstand pressure, the way they process energy without sunlight, the way they've built entire lives in permanent cold and permanent dark, teach us something valuable about the outer edges of what life itself is capable of. And then there are the vessels, the Trieste, the deep-sea Challenger, Kaiko, Nereus, and the small handful of others that have made this journey since. Every single one of them pushed the absolute limits of what engineers believed was possible to build.